Have you ever wondered how people long ago built amazing things with almost nothing? Imagine standing in front of huge stone temples, carved without metal tools, perfectly aligned with the stars. Think about a city that made a special fish sauce that was famous across an empire. Picture an ancient town with fancy ball courts and painted pottery. Or imagine canals that turned a dry desert into green fields, all dug by hand. These stories come from very different places, but they all make us ask, how did they do it? What did they believe? What happened to them? In Mexico, a tomb called the Red Queen hides the identity of a powerful woman covered in red mineral dust. We still don't know who she was. In Malta, people built giant stone temples like Ġgantija more than 5,000 years ago, long before pyramids existed, and aligned them with sunrise. On the other side of the world, the Hohokam people of the Arizona desert built canals and ball courts, and made beautiful red-on-buff pottery. Their canals lasted for centuries, but no one knows for sure why they stopped using them. In Morocco, an old city called Lixus was once a place of trade and worship. It might have even been linked to the myth of the Garden of the Hesperides. Deep in Peru, a labyrinth called Qenko was part of a network of sacred sites around Cusco. It has zigzag channels and underground rooms where rituals might have happened. All these sites remind us that people in the past were clever and creative, even without modern machines. These mysteries show how humans across the world came up with different solutions to the same problems: building, farming, trading, worshipping, and remembering their dead. They remind us that the past isn't simple or one-sided. Every new discovery raises new questions. If we don't protect and study these places, their lessons could disappear forever. That's why it's important to keep learning and exploring. I'd love to know where you're watching this from and what time it is where you live. Please share it in the comments. It's always fun to see how far these stories travel. And if you enjoy learning about mysteries like these, consider subscribing to this channel so you can see new stories every day. You'll not only support the work that goes into finding and sharing these tales, but you'll also join a community of curious people who enjoy wondering about the world. Your comments and ideas help shape what we explore next. Let's keep our curiosity alive together. Red powder and silence. The mystery of the unnamed royal in Palenque in the humid lowlands of Chiapas, Mexico. The ancient Maya city of Palenque sits perched on a ridge overlooking the Usumacinta River. Its stone temples and palace complexes are draped in jungle vines and echo with the calls of howler monkeys. Palenque flourished between the 5th and 8th century CE, producing some of the most refined art and architecture of the Maya world. The city is famous for the Temple of the Inscriptions, where the great ruler Kinich Janab Pakal, often called Pakal the Great, lies in a richly carved sarcophagus. Yet one of Palenque's most haunting discoveries occurred not in that celebrated monument but in a nearby structure that archaeologists originally overlooked. It was 1994 when Fanny Lopez Jimenez, a Mexican archaeologist working with the National Institute of Anthropology and History, noticed a small opening at the base of a modest building later dubbed Temple 13. Beneath a large stone slab, she and her team found a sealed chamber carved into bedrock. The chamber contained a limestone sarcophagus whose lid bore relief carvings of a stylized monster mouth, typical of Maya funerary art. When researchers lifted the lid and peered inside, they were confronted with an unforgettable scene: a skeleton entirely covered in bright red powder. The bones, the jade ornaments, and even the stone walls of the tomb were coated in a thick layer of cinnabar, a mercury sulfide mineral ground into powder. Cinnabar was sacred to the Maya. It symbolized blood, fertility, and transformation, and it was used in elite burials to imbue the dead with regenerative power. This discovery quickly became known as the Tomb of the Red Queen. The remains belonged to an elderly woman, likely around 60 years old, who stood about 1.5 meters tall. The enamel wear and density of her bones suggest she enjoyed a privileged life with access to rich foods, unlike most of her contemporaries who labored in the fields. Her skull, slightly flattened by cranial deformation, a common practice among Maya elites, was once adorned with a funerary mask fitted with jade inlays. Her jaw bones were still there, and her teeth indicated a diet high in maize and animal protein, a mark of status. Near her skull lay the remains of a young adult male and a child, believed to have been sacrificed to accompany her into the afterlife, underscoring the high rank of the tomb's principal occupant. The thick crimson coating of cinnabar creates an otherworldly effect. Cinnabar is toxic, its dust can cause neurological damage if inhaled. Yet the Maya valued it because its brilliant color resembled fresh blood. In Maya cosmology, blood was life, the sustenance of gods and ancestors. The application of cinnabar across the entire chamber may have been meant to symbolically baptize the occupant in blood, sealing her essence with the vitality needed for rebirth. Cinnabar's use in this tomb is extreme, even for the Maya, leading some researchers to suggest it was meant to deter the living from disturbing the tomb, protecting an individual so important that her very name had to be hidden. The tomb contained no inscriptions, no carved panels recounting the occupant's genealogy or deeds. This silence is striking in a culture that celebrated lineage and recorded the accomplishments of rulers and nobles on stone stele and temple facades. At first, scholars assumed the woman was Lady Tzak Buajah, also called Lady Sak Kuk, the wife of Pakal the Great. Her burial near Pakal's tomb and the wealth of the grave goods suggested a royal. However, when scientists extracted mitochondrial DNA from the bones and compared it with DNA from Pakal's remains, there was no evidence of kinship. Palenque's inscriptional records mention other noblewomen, but none fit the limited evidence precisely. Some researchers propose that the Red Queen could have been Pakal's mother or grandmother, perhaps the powerful Lady Sak Kuk who served as regent until Pakal came of age. Others think she might have been a high priestess, a woman who officiated in rituals so sacred that naming her would have been taboo. One hypothesis suggests she was the last keeper of Palenque's sacred rituals, an individual who needed to be buried close to Pakal to symbolically preserve dynastic legitimacy after the city's decline. Another layer of mystery lies in the tomb's architecture. The chamber is hidden beneath Temple 13, a building that appears plain from the outside. The sarcophagus is carved with motifs similar to those on Pakal's tomb but has subtle differences, hinting at a different time period or symbolic vocabulary. The entire chamber seems to have been sealed in one event, and there is no evidence of subsequent intrusion. This may indicate that the Red Queen's burial was carefully planned and carried out with great secrecy. The presence of the two sacrificial companions suggests a ritual complexity that extends beyond simple burial. Were they relatives? Attendants? Religious practitioners? Their presence implies a theatrical component to the funeral, perhaps a reenactment of mythic narratives about death and rebirth. The discovery of the Red Queen reminds us that even in one of the most intensely studied Maya cities, many questions remain unanswered. What forces required her to be hidden, her name erased and her spirit sealed in mercury? What knowledge did she represent that subsequent generations might have wished to suppress or protect? These questions continue to inspire archaeologists and explorers alike as they seek to decode the silent messages left in stone. Stone giants before the dynasties, Shirmau's forgotten civilization travel north from Palenque across oceans and deserts to the dusty Lus Plateau of northern China, and you will find another ancient site that rewrites what we thought we knew about early civilization. For centuries, a section of wall near the town of Shenmu was assumed to be part of the Ming-era Great Wall. Only in 2011 did archaeologists realize that those stone fortifications predated the Great Wall by millennia. The site they uncovered, called Shirmau, dates to around 2000 BCE, at least 1,000 years before the Shang dynasty and centuries before Chinese historiography begins. Its existence challenges a long-held assumption that early Chinese settlements were built primarily with earth and wood. Shirmau's builders went straight to stone, and in a big way. The Shirmau complex sprawls across more than 400 hectares of rugged terrain near the banks of the Wuding River. Its outer wall alone runs for more than 4 kilometers. Some sections are 6 meters thick and stand 6 meters high. Beyond this wall lies an inner ring of walls protecting a central platform that rises nearly 70 meters above the surrounding landscape. On top of this platform once stood palatial buildings and ceremonial spaces, accessed by monumental staircases. The platform's sheer height and the scale of its terraces suggest a hierarchical society with leaders who commanded vast labor forces. Over 100 tiers of stone were cut, hauled, and stacked to create this artificial mountain. People living in the 2nd millennium BCE built a structure that would be imposing even today. Transporting stone across semi-arid hills and ravines required advanced planning and social organization. The nearest quarries with stone of appropriate quality are more than 10 kilometers away. Hauling blocks weighing several tons would have needed teams of laborers and engineered sledges, a logistical challenge comparable to the building of pyramids in Egypt or ziggurats in Mesopotamia. The stonework itself has astonished archaeologists. While the exterior walls use roughly shaped field stones, key gateways and inner walls feature blocks cut so precisely that they interlock without mortar, reminiscent of the masonry of Machu Picchu or the Inca. Some blocks bear carved motifs depicting fantastic creatures, snarling beasts, serpents, and geometric patterns that are not found in any known Chinese art traditions from later periods. These carvings hint at a symbolic system we cannot yet decipher. One particularly intriguing feature of Shirmao is the deliberate deposition of jade objects within its walls. Archaeologists have found jade discs, tubes and blades inserted into the stonework at corners, gate thresholds and other structurally significant points. Jade was considered a precious material across ancient China, often associated with immortality and spiritual power. Inserting jade into walls suggests that Shirmao's builders believed in the protective or sanctifying properties of the stone. They might have been seeking to imbue the walls with longevity or to ward off malevolent spirits. Elsewhere at the site, excavators uncovered 70 to 80 human skulls, mostly those of young women, arranged beneath the base of certain walls. These skulls were likely victims of ritual sacrifice meant to consecrate the building or to curry favor with ancestral spirits. The scale of these sacrifices indicates that Shirmao was not just a settlement but a ceremonial center where earthly and spiritual power intersected. Shirmao's existence complicates our narrative of Chinese civilization. According to traditional historiography, the first Chinese dynasties, the Xia, Shang and Zhou, emerged in the Yellow River Valley. They built with rammed earth and left behind bronze artifacts, oracle bones and eventually written texts. Shirmao predates these dynasties yet displays an urban scale and technological sophistication that rivals or exceeds them. It has no evidence of bronze tools, but some excavated objects suggest early experimentation with metallurgy. Its art displays influences that some scholars link to steppe cultures of Central Asia, raising the possibility of long-distance contacts or cultural diffusion. Shirmao seems to stand at the crossroads between settled agricultural societies and nomadic groups from the northwest. The large stone walls may have been as much about projecting power as they were about defending against external threats. Despite its grandeur, Shirmao was abandoned after only a few centuries. Archaeologists find no evidence of its inhabitants after around 1800 BCE. There are no signs of conquest, no burnt layers or mass graves indicative of war. Instead, many researchers believe that climate change may have played a role. Geological evidence suggests that the region became drier during the late Neolithic, making agriculture harder to sustain. This could have forced Shirmao's population to disperse or migrate. Yet the memory of Shirmao did not completely vanish. Oral histories collected from local villagers speak of a city inhabited by giants or foreign tribes who built stone walls and then disappeared. The state's absence from written history might have been due to its location on the periphery of later dynastic centers. Or perhaps Shirmao was intentionally excluded from canonical histories because its culture did not conform to later political narratives. The questions raised by Shirmao remain tantalizing. Why did its builders choose stone over the more easily worked packed earth used by their contemporaries? Were they consciously distinguishing themselves from other communities? Did they import their architectural knowledge from faraway regions, or did they independently invent these techniques? Who carved the monstrous faces on the gate lintels, and what meaning did those faces hold? As excavations continue, archaeologists hope to answer these questions by analyzing artifacts, analyzing food remains and comparing DNA from skeletal remains with those of other ancient populations. Until then, Shimao stands like a ghost city on the edge of a desert, inviting us to rethink the origins of Chinese civilization. Recent excavations at Shimao have also uncovered evidence of extensive craft production and long-distance exchange. Pottery shards bear decorations distinct from those of Yellow River cultures, combining incised lines with stamped patterns reminiscent of steppe ceramics. The presence of jade from the Lus Plateau suggests trade with distant regions. Some jades are shaped into knives and axes that appear unused, implying ceremonial rather than utilitarian functions. A fragmentary mural found on a building wall contains pigments of green and red, depicting geometric patterns that may represent mythological scenes or cosmological maps. Archaeologists have also unearthed small pits containing animal bones and burnt seeds, possibly remnants of ritual feasts associated with construction or seasonal ceremonies. These discoveries hint at a complex social world in which artisans, traders, priests and laborers cooperated under powerful leaders. There is even speculation that Shimao's rulers controlled irrigation systems or managed animal herds that sustained the city. More provocative are suggestions that Shimao's elites maintained diplomatic or marital ties with steppe groups beyond China's borders, blending traditions in ways that blurred cultural boundaries. With each new trench opened, Shimao adds layers of detail to the story of Neolithic Eurasia and prompts us to question the neat boundaries we impose on past cultures. Did this stone city represent an early experiment in urbanism that ultimately failed because of ecological stress? Or was Shimao one node in a broader network of societies exchanging ideas and technologies long before written history began? The answers remain buried, waiting for spades and science. Warriors in the mist, the Chachapoya and their sky burials. Imagine you are trekking through the cloud forests of northern Peru. The air is thin and damp. Mountains rise like towers from the valley floor, their peaks draped with mist. In this environment, the Chachapoya people created a way of life that defied the usual patterns of Andean cultures. Flourishing between roughly 800 CE and their conquest by the Inca around 1470, the Chachapoya were known to neighboring peoples as the Cloud Warriors because they made their homes in the clouds. They lived on steep mountain slopes and plateaus more than 3,000 meters above sea level, building communities carved into or perched atop cliffs. Their architecture and burial practices reveal a worldview shaped by isolation, rugged terrain, and a constant negotiation with the forces of nature. The most striking aspect of Chachapoya mortuary behavior is their practice of sky burials. Instead of burying their dead underground, the Chachapoya placed them high on vertical cliff faces. Some remains were wrapped in layers of cloth and placed inside natural caves or niches cut into rock. Others were sealed within anthropomorphic clay sarcophagi that stand upright on narrow ledges. These sarcophagi, known as sarcófagos de Carragia, are up to 2 meters tall and fashioned from a mixture of clay and stone, sculpted to resemble stylized human forms with oversized heads and elongated bodies. Their faces are painted white with geometric designs in red and black. Some have protruding ears or horns. Each sarcophagus contains the actual skeletal remains of an individual, often a chief, shaman or warrior, placed in a fetal position and wrapped in textiles. The sarcophagi stand on precarious ledges, as if keeping watch over the valleys below. Why did the Chachapoya choose to suspend their dead between earth and sky? Several explanations may operate together. Spiritually, placing ancestors high up might have facilitated their journey to the gods, believed to reside above the clouds. High places were sacred in many Andean cosmologies. Mountains were living beings known as apis. Burying the dead in mountains allowed them to become part of the landscape. Practically, the high, inaccessible locations protected the remains from predators and looters. The Chachapoya area is teeming with birds of prey and rodents, and burying bodies on the ground would expose them to scavengers. By sealing their dead in cliffs, the Chachapoya preserved them for centuries. In many of the caves and sarcophagi excavated by archaeologists, hair, skin, and clothing remain intact because of the cool, dry microclimate on the cliffs. This preservation has allowed researchers to analyze DNA and textiles, shedding light on Chachapoya health, diet, and social organization. Chachapoya society left behind other monumental architecture as well. Their largest city, Quilap, sits on a ridge overlooking the Utcubamba Valley. Built between the 6th and 10th centuries, the complex consists of massive outer walls up to 20 meters high and hundreds of circular houses with diamond-shaped friezes etched into their walls. Quilap may have housed several thousand people and served as a political, ceremonial, and defensive center. Its location on a narrow ridge meant that attackers could be repelled easily. The Chachapoya built terraces and staircases into the slope, controlling access. Within Quilap's walls, archaeologists found bones arranged in ossuaries and hints of ritual spaces. The fortress's scale underscores the engineering abilities of a people often portrayed as primitive by early chroniclers. The Chachapoya interacted with larger Andean cultures. The Inca Empire, expanding under Tupac Inca Yupanqui in the 15th century, attempted to subdue the Cloud Warriors. The incursion took years because the terrain favored local defenders. The Inca eventually incorporated the Chachapoya into their empire, relocating many families to other parts of the Andes as part of their resettlement policies. Yet the Chachapoya retained aspects of their culture, including their circular houses and cliff burials. Spanish chroniclers who accompanied Francisco Pizarro's conquest of the Inca later described the Chachapoya as tall, fair-skinned, and light-eyed. These descriptions fed speculation that the Chachapoya descended from Europeans or another foreign people, a hypothesis that DNA evidence has not supported. Genetic studies suggest that the Chachapoya were Andean, though they might have had minor genetic influences from coastal or Amazonian peoples. Modern excavations have uncovered dozens of Chachapoya burial sites, but many remain unexplored because of their dangerous locations. Some sarcophagi have collapsed over time, revealing only fragments. Others are still intact, but conservationists worry that tourism or looting could disturb them. Each new find brings surprises. One cave contained a string of mummies wrapped in layers of cotton and dyed textiles, each with its own facial expression painted on the outer mask. Another site held the remains of infants buried alongside small offerings of miniature ceramics and carved bone. Researchers debate whether the variation in burial types reflects differences in status, family lineages, or specialized roles like shamans versus warriors. The intangible aspect of Chachapoya culture, what they believed about the afterlife, how they mourned and remembered their dead, remains elusive because they left no written records. If you stand in the highlands of Amazonas and look up at a cliff speckled with tiny white coffins, you cannot help but feel the presence of those who placed them there. The sarcophagi appear like guardians looking out over the valley, their painted faces watching both the world of the living and the world of spirits. They prompt questions. Did the Chachapoya view death as ascension? Were the deceased thought to intervene on behalf of their descendants? How did they transport heavy clay sarcophagi up steep rock faces without ropes or pulleys? And perhaps most importantly, how many more burial sites remain hidden in the clouds, protecting secrets of a people whose voices still echo in the mist? In addition to their funerary and defensive architecture, the Chachapoya were skilled artists and weavers. Fragments of textiles recovered from cliff tombs reveal complex geometric patterns woven from cotton and dyed with natural pigments. Some textiles depict birds, felines, and abstract symbols that may encode myths or clan identities. Ceramic vessels excavated from habitation sites are typically small, with red and white painted designs. Many of these vessels were likely used for daily meals rather than rituals, suggesting that aesthetic expression permeated even mundane activities. The Chachapoya were also adept at farming steep slopes. They built narrow terraces supported by retaining walls, cultivating maize, potatoes, and quinoa at elevations that challenge modern farmers. They supplemented their diet with game from the forest and possibly traded with neighboring Amazonian groups for fruits and fish. Spanish chroniclers noted that the Chachapoya carried slings and used blow darts, indicating a versatile warrior culture. While their isolation fostered independence, it did not prevent exchange. Shell beads from coastal Ecuador and metal objects from highland Peru have been found in Chachapoya contexts, implying long-distance contacts. Such discoveries complicate the idea of the Chachapoya as hermits in the clouds. They were instead part of a network of highland and lowland communities whose interactions remain only dimly understood. As we piece together artifacts of daily life, we gain a fuller picture of a culture that balanced formidable spiritual practices with pragmatic adaptation to a challenging environment. Carved in stone, Qenko's labyrinth and Inca rituals near the city of Cusco in Peru, not far from the imposing fortress of Sacsayhuaman, a humble limestone outcrop contains one of the most perplexing ritual sites of the Inca world. Known as Qenko, from the Quechua word Qenko, meaning zigzag or amaze, the site looks nothing like the well-fitted stone walls of other Inca monuments. There are no towering terraces or elaborate stone buildings. Instead, Qenko is a rock that has been carved, channeled and hollowed to create a complex of steps, channels, niches and tunnels. Its very simplicity makes it enigmatic. Tourists often walk through quickly, unaware of the profound mysteries it holds. But for those who linger, Qenko offers glimpses into an Inca worldview that blended astronomy, ritual sacrifice, and an intuitive understanding of the landscape. Qenko sits at over 3,600 meters above sea level on a hill known as Socorro. The site can be divided into two areas, a large open court where a carved rock juts out of the ground, and an underground chamber beneath this rock. On the upper surface of the rock, one can trace a series of zigzagging channels carved into the stone. These channels snake back and forth before disappearing into the bedrock. Researchers believe liquids were poured into these channels, perhaps chicha, a fermented corn beverage consumed in rituals, or blood from animal sacrifices. Watching the liquid flow along the zigzags would have been a symbolic representation of life's path, emphasizing the twists and turns of existence and the connection between spiritual and physical realms. The careful design ensured that the liquid moved at a consistent pace, creating a meditative visual effect. Another feature of Qenko is a series of carved niches and seats on the rock's sides. These may have held mummies, effigies, or offerings. Inca rituals often involve the display of mummified ancestors, especially during solstices and equinoxes. Mummies were not considered dead but living beings who required food, drink and participation in ceremonies. Qenko's niches might have been intended for such ancestral presences, linking the past to the present. The carved seats could have been thrones for priests or nobles who directed ceremonies and oversaw offerings. The most intriguing element, however, lies beneath the rock. A tunnel leads down into a man-made cave carved out of solid limestone. Inside this cool, dim chamber stands a large rectangular table carved from the bedrock. The table is polished smooth and slopes slightly downward. Some archaeologists believe it was used as an altar for mummification or sacrifice. Others think it may have served as a table for preparing bodies for burial. Above the chamber, small openings in the rock allow sunlight to enter. At certain times of year, particularly around the solstices, light shafts penetrate the chamber and illuminate the table, suggesting the Inca timed ceremonies with solar events. This interplay of light and shadow connects Qenko to the broader Andean tradition of using architecture to track celestial cycles. While Qenko lacks inscriptions or elaborate buildings, its symbolic complexity cannot be understated. Inca cosmology divided the universe into three realms: the upper world, Hanan Pasha*, the middle world, K Pasha*, and the underworld, Goku Pasha*. Qenko's carved surface channels likely represented the flow of life between the upper and middle worlds, while the underground chamber linked to the underworld. The entire site functions as a microcosm of the Inca cosmos, a place where rituals could mediate between human and divine, life and death. The zigzag patterns recall those seen on other Inca ceramics and textiles, often symbolizing water, snakes or mountains. Snakes, in particular, were associated with the underworld and with wisdom. The interplay of water and snakes may signify transformation and communication with the unseen. Accounts from Spanish chroniclers provide hints, though they are colored by colonial interpretations. Some described Qenko as a shrine where sacrifices were made to Pachamama, the earth goddess. Others claimed it was used for mummification rites. Bones found in the channel support the idea of animal sacrifice. There are also references to the use of silver plates that reflected sunlight into the underground chamber, perhaps to symbolically feed the mummies with light. Because the Inca did not leave behind written texts detailing the purpose of specific monuments, archaeologists must rely on comparison with other sites, ethnographic studies of descendant communities, and the alignment of the site with astronomical events. So far, no consensus has emerged. Qenko remains deliberately opaque, a reminder that some aspects of ancient belief systems resist modern interpretation. Walking through Qenko, one might feel disoriented. The carved channels lead your eyes along serpentine paths. The rock surface is pitted with holes and niches that seem randomly placed until you consider their possible alignments with constellations. Descend into the cave and the air grows cool, the outside sounds fade and the polished table glows faintly under shafts of light. The space invites quiet contemplation. What rituals took place here? Were bodies prepared for burial or reanimation? Did priests pour sacrificial blood down the channels while reciting prayers? Was Qenko a school where novices learned sacred geometry? Or was its very mystery the point, a physical riddle designed to evoke awe and humility? Whatever the truth, Qenko testifies to the Inca ability to shape natural rock into sacred architecture, blending function and symbolism in ways that continue to inspire wonder. Building with giants, Ġgantija's megalithic enigma hundreds of kilometers away from the Andes, in the Mediterranean Sea, the small island of Gozo holds a monument that appears to belong to giants. Ġgantija, pronounced Ġgantija, meaning place of giants, in Maltese, is a megalithic temple complex that predates Stonehenge and the Great Pyramid of Giza. Built between about 3600 and 3000 BCE, it is one of the oldest freestanding structures on Earth. Standing before its massive stones, you feel as though you are looking at the bones of an ancient being. Two adjoining temples share a common facade, each with a series of semicircular chambers arranged around a central passage. Their shape has been compared to a clover leaf or, more symbolically, to the form of a fertile female figure. The walls of Ġgantija are made of limestone blocks that can be up to 6 meters long and weigh as much as 50 tons. These stones were quarried locally, but moving them across the uneven terrain of Gozo without metal tools or wheels would have been immensely difficult. Archaeologists have proposed various methods. The builders may have used wooden rollers or balls of stone to roll the blocks. They might have placed spherical stones beneath the slabs to act as bearings, or they could have employed sledges lubricated with animal fat. Experimental archaeologists have attempted to replicate these techniques, but none have definitively explained how the largest stones were maneuvered into place. Some of Ġgantija's megaliths are set at slight inclines, requiring not just horizontal but vertical movement. Modern cranes would struggle to achieve such feats. The absence of wheel technology suggests that the builders possessed a sophisticated understanding of friction, leverage and communal labor. The interior arrangement of Ġgantija adds to its allure. Each temple features a central corridor leading into a series of apses, where altars and ritual platforms stand. The floors are paved with carefully dressed stone slabs. Many of the altars show deep grooves or burnt material, indicating they were used for sacrifice or offerings. Organic remains discovered in excavations include animal bones, stone grinders and pottery shards, suggesting rituals involving feasting or cooking. Some chambers were designed to amplify sound, perhaps to enhance the chanting or drumming of ceremonies. The temple complex is oriented roughly toward the southeast. At the equinoxes, the rising sun shines directly down the central corridor, illuminating the inner sanctum. This alignment underscores the builder's understanding of solar cycles and highlights the temple's possible role in marking seasonal events, crucial for agricultural societies. Archaeologists have uncovered numerous figurines and stone statuettes in Malta's megalithic temples. These figures often depict corpulent female forms with exaggerated hips, breasts, and bellies. The sheer abundance of these fat ladies, as they are sometimes colloquially called, has led to the interpretation that Malta's prehistoric religion centered on a mother goddess or fertility cult. The trilobed shape of Ġgantija's temple supports this theory, echoing the curves of a pregnant body. The presence of grinding stones and cooking implements near the altar suggests that rituals may have involved the preparation of food, perhaps symbolizing nourishment from the earth goddess. Without any written records, we cannot know the names or myths associated with these rituals. But the iconography points toward a cosmology in which the cyclical rhythms of birth, growth, and regeneration were celebrated and sanctified. One of the most enduring legends about Ġgantija attributes its construction to a giantess named Sansuna. According to local folklore, Sansuna built the temples in one night while carrying her child on her shoulder. She is said to have mixed human milk with limestone to bind the stones together. This story underscores the sense of awe that the megaliths inspire. For Neolithic farmers on Gozo, the act of erecting walls taller than a person and stones heavier than any animal would have seemed miraculous. The legend also reinforces the connection between the temple and feminine power. Whether the story reflects ancient myth or was invented much later, it reveals how local communities grappled with the enigma of their ancestors' accomplishments. Despite centuries of study, Ġgantija continues to raise questions. Who exactly built the temples? The people who constructed Ġgantija were part of a broader megalithic culture on Malta that flourished for about 1,000 years. Archaeologists have found little evidence of conflict at these sites. Instead, they point to peaceful communities engaged in farming, fishing, and ritual. Why did these temple builders vanish around 2500 BCE? Some hypotheses suggest resource depletion or climate change may have made the islands less hospitable. Others propose that new populations arrived, bringing different cultural practices. There is no clear sign of violence or invasion. The temples themselves were not reused by later Bronze Age inhabitants, indicating that the new societies either did not understand their significance or chose not to continue the traditions. The abandonment of such monumental structures raises the question of how a community can pour generations of labor into a project only to let it fall into disuse. Ġgantija invites us to ponder the impermanence of even the most enduring stones and the fragility of cultural memory. The whispering tunnels of Chavín de Huántar deep in Peru's Andes, nestled where the Masna and Huacheca rivers converge, stands an architectural marvel that functioned as a sensory machine. Chavín de Huántar, built between about 900 and 200 BCE, was a ceremonial center of the Chavín culture, an early civilization that influenced a vast swath of the Andean world. Unlike many ancient sites, Chavín was not a city with houses and markets. It was a pilgrimage site, a spiritual laboratory where architecture, sculpture, sound and psychoactive substances combined to induce profound experiences. Its designers created a carefully orchestrated ritual environment that manipulated visitors' perceptions and emotions, perhaps to convey religious revelations or reinforce priestly authority. Chavín Central Complex comprises a series of temples built from dressed stone blocks without mortar. The earliest temple, often called the Old Temple, features a U-shaped plan with two flanking wings and a sunken circular plaza at the center. This sunken court may have served as a gathering place for rituals, with carved stone reliefs depicting anthropomorphic beings, part human, part jaguar, gazing down from the walls. Rising above the plaza is a massive pyramidal structure. The temple's walls are carved with intricate designs of mythical creatures, including fanged deities, serpents, caimans, and harpy eagles. Later, a new temple was added, expanding the complex and incorporating additional plazas and corridors. Perhaps the most intriguing aspect of Chavín de Huántar lies below ground. Beneath the massive stone platforms is an extensive network of narrow tunnels, chambers and ventilation shafts. These galleries were deliberately engineered with specific acoustic and visual properties. In some passages, the walls are angled to create standing waves, causing certain frequencies to linger. In others, the tight corridors allow low frequencies to reverberate but dampen high ones, making deep sounds dominate. Archaeologists have found conch shell trumpets made from Strombus galeatus shells, imported from the coast, buried in these tunnels. When blown in the galleries, these shells emit a deep, resonant bellow that reverberates through the stone. Experimental archaeologists have recreated these sounds, revealing how a single trumpet could create the sensation of multiple voices echoing off the walls. One of the most iconic sculptures at Chavin is the Lanzan, a 4-meter-high granite monolith carved with the image of a deity with fanged teeth, serpentine hair and avian claws. The Lanzan stands in a cross-shaped chamber in the heart of the old temple. Pilgrims likely navigated a maze of dark tunnels, guided by priests, until they confronted the monolith, lit dramatically by a shaft of light from above. The combination of darkness, disorienting sounds and sudden illumination would have heightened the encounter. Many researchers believe that Chavin priests used hallucinogenic plants, particularly San Pedro cactus, containing the psychoactive compound mescaline, to induce altered states. Carved stone heads around the complex depict human faces with mucus dripping from their noses, a known physiological response to consuming San Pedro. In these altered states, pilgrims might have perceived the carvings as moving or speaking, reinforcing the power of the Chavin cult. Chavin's influence extended far beyond its immediate valley. Archaeologists have found Chavin ceramics, textiles and iconography across a wide swath of Peru, from the coast to the Amazon. This suggests that Chavin priests hosted pilgrims from distant regions and disseminated religious ideas that shaped subsequent Andean traditions. Many of the motifs that appear at Chavin, fanged deities, jaguar features, serpentine designs, reappear in later cultures like the Moche and the Nazca. The use of sunken plazas, U-shaped temple plans and underground galleries set a pattern for ceremonial architecture in the Andes. Chavin may have served as a kind of religious university, training priests who spread its doctrines. Modern excavations continue to reveal new aspects of Chavin. Recent work has uncovered more subterranean passages and chambers, suggesting that the site's network of tunnels is even more extensive than previously thought. Archaeologists are exploring the acoustic properties of each space, mapping how sound travels and interacts. They are also analyzing residues on ceramic vessels for traces of plant alkaloids, hoping to confirm the use of psychoactive substances. As more is learned, one thing remains clear: Chavin de Huantar was built not just to house sacred objects but to engineer experiences. It stands as a testament to the human capacity to manipulate environment and perception in the service of religious awe. Chavin de Huantar's artistic corpus extends beyond the Lanzan. The site houses other monumental sculptures, such as the Raimondi Stela and the Teo obelisk, each carved with densely interwoven depictions of animals and supernatural beings. The Raimondi Stela portrays a deity holding two staffs, its eyes wide and its mouth filled with fangs. When viewed upside down, the image transforms, highlighting the Chavin fascination with duality and transformation. The Teo obelisk resembles a crocodilian creature entwined with smaller animals, perhaps representing a mythic narrative. Outside the temples, a portal known as the Black and White Portal features lintels carved with alternating black and white stone, topped by two protruding heads representing transformed humans. These elements indicate that Chavin artisans worked with both stone and ideology, creating visual metaphors that expressed complex religious concepts. Recent chemical analyses of residues on Chavin pottery indicate the presence of cacao, chili peppers and maize beer, suggesting that feasts accompanied ceremonies. Archaeologists also note that the site's location at the confluence of rivers symbolized an intersection of worlds. Rivers were pathways to the underworld in many Andean beliefs. Their convergence may have been perceived as a portal. Chavin's network of canals controlled water flow through the temples, producing sounds as water cascaded down stone channels. The interplay of water, sound, light and sculpture created a multisensory environment designed to overwhelm and transform participants. As more tunnels and galleries are explored, our appreciation of the ingenuity behind this ancient, performance art, grows. But key questions remain: who commissioned these artworks? How were ritual experiences choreographed? And what did pilgrims take away from their time in the darkness and light of Chavin? The site invites us to imagine ancient ceremonies as sophisticated theatrical productions that harnessed every element of the environment to transmit sacred knowledge. A city still sleeping, Lixus and the layered past of Morocco on the Atlantic coast of Morocco, just inland from the windswept mouth of the Lixus River, lie the ruins of Lixus, one of North Africa's oldest cities. Founded by Phoenician traders around the 7th century BCE, Lixus became a Carthaginian outpost, a Mauritanian royal city and a Roman colony before continuing as an Islamic settlement. Its strategic location near fertile plains and a navigable river made it a hub for trade in metals, fish and agricultural products. Yet despite its long history, much of Lixus remains hidden beneath the earth. Only about a third of its estimated 60 hectares has been excavated. The rest lies buried under layers of soil and vegetation, waiting for future archaeologists to uncover its secrets. The excavated portions of Lixus offer tantalizing glimpses into its past. In the Phoenician Quarter, archaeologists found temples dedicated to deities like Baal and Astarte, along with imported ceramics and amphorae that attest to trade connections across the Mediterranean. In the Roman area, there are remains of a forum, a basilica, baths, a theater and a large complex of fish salting factories. Lixus was renowned in antiquity for its garum, a fermented fish sauce exported throughout the Roman Empire. Giant vats where fish guts were mixed with salt and left to ferment dot the landscape. Nearby are mosaics depicting marine life and mythological scenes, though many remain covered to protect them from weathering. A terrace area overlooking the river contains foundations of temples and altars where rituals to gods and emperors were held. Coins, inscriptions and fragments of sculpture reveal a cosmopolitan community where Latin, Punic, Berber and Greek languages mingled. One of the most impressive features uncovered so far is the large temple complex known as the Temple Quarter. Covering an area of about 4 hectares, it includes foundations of multiple temples, courtyards and processional avenues. The earliest temple may date to the Phoenician period, but later modifications show Roman influence, including the use of opus testaceum, brickwork, and the presence of a Capitoline triad, Jupiter, Juno, Minerva. Archaeologists believe that at least one temple was dedicated to the Phoenician god Melkart, whom the Greeks equated with Heracles, and another to a regional deity associated with fertility and rivers. Exploring this quarter further could illuminate how religious practices evolved under different cultural regimes. What makes Lixus particularly fascinating is its layering. Unlike cities that were entirely razed and rebuilt, Lixus displays continuity. When the Romans took over, they built new structures but also renovated Punic ones. When the Islamic city flourished in the medieval period, it reused Roman walls and amphitheaters, converting them into mosques, houses, and markets. Archaeologists have found Islamic pottery, coins and inscriptions lying directly above Roman mosaics. This stratigraphy offers a rare opportunity to study cultural interaction over centuries. Each layer is like a page in a book. Excavating one page without damaging the others requires careful planning, funding and time. Ground-penetrating radar surveys and test trenches indicate that vast portions of Lixus remain unexplored. There may be entire residential neighborhoods with houses, shops and workshops still buried. Cemeteries could reveal information about health, diet and burial customs across different periods. Unexcavated temples might hold inscriptions in Phoenician or Latin that clarify the city's political affiliations. There may be warehouses containing amphorae with sealed contents, offering chemical insights into trade goods. Archaeologists are excited about the possibility of finding Punic or Roman libraries. Wooden writing tablets might not survive, but inscriptions on stone could. The potential for discovery is enormous, yet excavations proceed slowly because of limited resources, environmental concerns, and the need to preserve what is already exposed. Lixus also invites us to ponder the nature of historical knowledge. It sits quietly on its hill overlooking the river, a city that is still alive in its secrecy. Locals graze sheep among the ruins, fishermen use the ancient harbor, children play among carved columns. The site is not cordoned off from daily life. As archaeologists excavate and interpret, they must also negotiate with the community, ensuring that research benefits local people and respects their relationship to the land. Lixus teaches us that the past is not separate from the present. It lives beneath our feet, influencing our identities in ways we often cannot see. What new stories lie buried beneath the soil? How will they transform our understanding of North African history? Only time and careful excavation will tell. Canals of a vanished desert kingdom. The Hohokam enigma crossed the ocean again to the deserts of North America, and you encounter another technological marvel crafted by ancient hands. Around 300 CE, an indigenous culture known as the Hohokam began building a network of irrigation canals in the Salt and Gila River valleys of what is now central Arizona. Over the next 1,000 years, they extended these canals for hundreds of kilometers, transforming an arid landscape into lush agricultural fields. At its height, the network may have irrigated more than 100,000 acres, supporting tens of thousands of people. Modern Phoenix owes its existence to these canals. Many of the city's current ditches follow Hohokam paths, some repurposed and enlarged by 19th century settlers. Despite this enduring legacy, we still do not fully understand how the Hohokam engineered such precise waterworks without writing, metal tools, or measurement devices. The Hohokam canals varied in size from massive primary canals up to 15 meters wide and more than 2 meters deep to smaller distribution ditches that fed individual fields. The gradient of these canals is perhaps their most impressive feature. To function, a canal must slope gently downward. Too steep and the water erodes the banks, too shallow and the water stagnates. Archaeologists measuring Hohokam canals have found gradients of about 1 to 2 feet per mile, an incredibly slight slope that maintained a steady flow over dozens of kilometers. Achieving this without modern surveying equipment is a feat that puzzles engineers. The Hohokam seem to have achieved it by developing an intuitive understanding of local topography. They likely measured slopes by sighting along canal banks, using water levels in small troughs or gourd bowls to compare heights, and relying on the accumulated knowledge of generations of canal builders. The construction of the canals required large labor forces. Groups of families or clans may have been responsible for digging and maintaining specific sections. Archaeologists believe that the Hohokam organized into irrigation communities, social units based on canal networks rather than kinship alone. These communities developed collective rules for water distribution, scheduling irrigation rotations and resolving disputes. Evidence for this social complexity includes earthen platform mounds located near canal heads. These mounds, some of which were built of adobe and decorated with painted murals, appear to have served as ceremonial and administrative centers. Leaders may have lived atop the mounds, overseeing both ritual and practical aspects of water management. The mounds sometimes contain rooms with hearths, storage pits and polished floors, suggesting a combination of domestic and public functions. Hohokam farmers grew crops well suited to the desert environment: maize, beans, squash and cotton. They also cultivated agave, prickly pear and mesquite. Cotton was woven into textiles and used for trade with neighboring societies. The canal system allowed for 2 growing seasons per year, increasing productivity. Archaeologists have found remains of shell jewelry, turquoise, obsidian and macaw feathers in Hohokam settlements, indicating far-reaching trade networks. Communities traded with peoples from the Gulf of California, the Colorado Plateau and Mesoamerica. The presence of macaw feathers, which come from birds native to Mexico and Central America, suggests long-distance connections and possibly ceremonial exchanges. Despite their successes, the Hohokam canal system fell silent around 1450 CE. Villages were abandoned, canals filled with silt. There is no clear evidence of invasion or epidemic. Researchers propose several causes. A prolonged drought could have reduced river flows. Flooding might have destroyed canal infrastructure. Salinization of the soil could have made fields infertile. Social tensions or changes in trade routes might have undermined communal cooperation. It is possible that a combination of environmental stress and social upheaval led people to disperse. The collapse reminds us that even the most sophisticated infrastructure can be vulnerable to shifting climates and human dynamics. In the late 1800s, Euro-American settlers arrived in the Phoenix area. They found traces of the ancient canals and cleared them of debris, using them to irrigate their own fields. Some sections of the modern Salt River Project canal system follow Hohokam alignments so exactly that archaeologists can map the ancient network through them. Recognizing the genius of the original builders, the Arizona Canal Company named its first major canal the Arizona Canal, though locals sometimes call it the Hohokam Canal. Today, the Hohokam are honored as engineers who reshaped the desert and whose knowledge of water management remains relevant. Yet we still do not know how they consistently achieved such precise grades over long distances or how their social institutions supported maintenance for centuries. Each time archaeologists survey another ancient ditch or unearth a canal head, they learn more about the Hohokam's ingenuity and the fragility of human adaptation in arid lands.